If Eric Swalwell has sex with a Chinese spy in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does she make a sound? If Eric Swalwell leaves Chicago going 75 miles an hour and a Chinese spy leaves San Francisco going 68 miles an hour, what city is the motel located where they're going to have sex? If having sex with Chinese spies was an Olympic event, would Eric Swalwell be Jesse Owens or Michael Phelps? Is it true that every time Eric Swalwell has sex with a Chinese spy, a communist angel gets his red armband? If having sex with Chinese spies was architecture, would Eric Swalwell be Sir Christopher Wren or Santiago Calatrava? If having sex with Chinese spies was classical music, would Eric Swalwell be George Friedrich Handel or Yo-Yo Ma? You didn't think I could bring that all the way back around to China, did you? Of course, you don't need me to tell you that Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy. Everybody knows Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy. No matter what Eric Swalwell does for the remainder of his dull, unexceptional life, the most noteworthy thing about him will always be the fact that he had sex with a Chinese spy. And if there's any more room left on the tombstone, sure, put down that he also enjoyed cutting big, juicy farts on live television. That is a life's work that any man could be proud of, really. But you know who else has taken a shine lately to mentioning the fact that Eric Swalwell had sex with a Chinese spy? His Republican colleagues in the House, of all people. It happened today. For the third or fourth time since the start of this Congress, it was during what was supposed to be a hearing on the criminal exploitation of foreign minor children on the southern border, but the Democrats don't want to talk about any of that, naturally, so when it was Swalwell's turn to ask questions of the witness, he just spent the whole time attacking her for some tweet that she wrote on January 6th and spent all of his time acting like the shameless, grandstanding fool that he is, haranguing this woman for being a Trump supporter and not even pretending to ask her any pertinent questions about the subject of the hearing. But the Republicans, it seems they have a game plan now for when Swalwell engages in these ridiculous displays of his. I'm not even sure which Republican it was who did it today. I just had the thing playing in my ear. But he asks the chairman if he can speak for just a moment, and he says to the witness, "Ma'am, I apologize for the antics of my colleague, Mr. Swalwell, a man who shouldn't be calling anybody else's character into question since he's got a bit of a checkered past and had sex with a Chinese spy." And Swalwell, he gets very offended whenever someone mentions the fact that he had sex with a Chinese spy, so he jumps up and says, "Damn it, Mr. Chairman, I demand that the member's words be taken down." And he keeps falling into this trap, amazingly, because I think he really is the dumbest man in North America. The smart play, if you're Swalwell, would be to not say anything, since it is a verifiably true fact about the world that you had sex with a Chinese spy. But no, he raises a ruckus and demands that the words be taken down. So then the chairman has to ask the member if he will voluntarily take his words down, and the member says, "Of course, Mr. Chairman, I am happy to have my words taken down. I just need Mr. Swalwell to tell me which specific words he wants taken down." So then Swalwell has to stand there and say, "The part where you said I had sex with a Chinese spy! Damn it!" Now, like I said, it's the third or the fourth time, and it just never gets old. They should repeat this drill anytime he goes off topic in any hearing of any of the committees that he still hasn't been thrown off of for having sex with a Chinese spy. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we handle Chinese spies the way real men do, by making them fall in love and become double agents. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your eponymous host and humble servant. And we have got momentous news from the world of politics, ladies and gentlemen. President Joe Biden has thrown his hat and his hair plugs, possibly his dentures, into the ring. And he has made it official that he will, in fact, be a candidate for a second term in office in 2024. And you know, In these divisive, polarized times in which we live, it's important, I think, to take note of the occasions when we are all of the same mind on something as a nation. And all across the fruited plain yesterday, from one end of the political spectrum to the other, all Americans were broadly in agreement in their reaction to the prospect of this 613-year-old semi-animated cadaver running for office yet again. For we all 350-odd million of us, liberal and conservative alike, from the woke wankers to the MAGA squad and all outposts of apathetic fence sitting in between, we all heard that momentous news and exclaimed in one voice, God, really? The Biden campaign put out a big, exciting campaign launch video, the tone of which was somewhere in between, let's say, a commercial for a hospice care facility and a commercial for a mortuary. It makes the Nikki Haley campaign launch video look like a Motorhead concert by comparison. We know Grandpa doesn't have much time, so treasure these few precious moments that remain, and we'll be here when the time comes. Copyright 2023, Allen Brothers Mortuary. All rights reserved. And no, I'm not playing the video. I did consider playing it briefly, but I think that's just not something I can do in good conscience. And there's no telling how much trouble the YouTube caption engine might have with it when it's Joe Biden attempting to speak English. Maybe you get a little advisory on the bottom of the screen that says, "This language is indecipherable. Please tell the speaker to remove his dentures and perhaps stop drinking." If there's anything about this video that jumps out at you, it is the cut and paste quality of the spoken passages, term used loosely, by Joe Biden. They're basically 3 and 4 word snippets at best that all have to be pasted together after the fact. And my God, man, for those of us who have a little bit of skin in the video editing game, I think we all of us say a silent prayer each night for Joe Biden's video editor. I don't know how much that dude gets paid, but give him a raise. They hand you like 2 hours of Joe Biden making random nonsense sounds, and you've got to turn it into 90 seconds of a man sounding lucid and intelligible. Your job as Joe Biden's video editor is to take this drooling, confused dementia patient and turn him into a version of himself that causes undecided voters to say, yes, I want that man to be my president when he is 86 years old. You will notice also with this video that Biden only says about half a dozen words where he's speaking directly to camera. And it's right at the very end of the spot. So it was all they could do to get enough snatches of audio that they could splice it together into something resembling a coherent launch video. And then the country watched it and they said, well, I don't know about voting for this old codger for president, but I will totally give my business to that mortuary. If your job is being video editor for the Joe Biden campaign, you basically have to have the skill set of a guy who herds cats and the skill set of a guy who nails Jell-O to trees. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to make Joe Biden appear cognizant of his surroundings. This message will self-destruct. And it has to be said, I had this thing all wrong. I didn't think this announcement, frankly, was ever going to happen. I thought Joe and his people were going to see the writing on the wall. The timing of the thing with the classified documents, that was no accident. That was the party and the fake news media and the deep state, but I repeat myself, saying, look, Joe, we appreciate your many, many years of ineptitude and corruption and hair sniffing. It means the world to us. But it's time to stand down and let a younger man take over. It sure would be a shame if this document thing turned into a big scandal. That's all we're saying. So the Democrats have got a hell of a serious problem now. And we're also, interestingly, poised to see a general election next year in which we might have 2 nominees whose parties both can't stand them. The GOP establishment doesn't like Trump. It never has, never will. And the Democrat establishment is desperate to move on from Biden because, let's face it, Joe Biden is not an attractive presidential candidate. The particular set of exigencies that existed in 2020 made him a serviceable one-time candidate whom you could probably drag across the finish line if everything went just exactly right. And so, Joe Biden didn't run for president as Joe Biden. He ran for president as guy with a pulse who is not Donald Trump. And he's trying to run as that guy again in 2024, which is one hell of a lot more difficult to do when you are the sitting president. That launch video was mostly about how awful Trump and his supporters are. But when you're the incumbent president who's running for re-election, I'm afraid that dog ain't gonna hunt. Incumbent presidents, they have to run on their track record. And Joe Biden's track record says that by any conceivable results-based metric, he is the worst president ever elected, allegedly, in his own right. And if we're including accidental presidents, he's in the top 3. I'm still unwilling to rank him ahead of Andrew Johnson and Chet Arthur just yet, but that could change if he succeeds in blundering us into World War III, so stay tuned for the updated rankings, I guess. But what the hell do you do if you're the Democrats? We all know the scenario that they were hoping for. They wanted Joe to gracefully step aside so they could replace him with Gavin Newsom. Because when you've got a terrible president that you need to replace, the obvious choice is a terrible governor. I mean, if Gavin Newsom can turn California into the out-migration capital of America, just imagine what he could do for the entire country. And just think about what an auspicious achievement that is. From the day they found gold at Sutter's Mill in 1848, for the next 1.5 centuries, and then some, California underwent constant, explosive, seemingly inexorable population growth. And Gavin Newsom put a stop to it in under 3 years. But then, such things have become part of our political status quo here in the 21st century, haven't they? We notice with increasing alarm and confusion that the least talented, least capable, most congenitally worthless people among us keep winding up in high public office. And the phenomenon just increases in absurdity with each passing election cycle. 5 years ago, could you have pictured a mute stroke victim with 0 life achievements being elected senator from Pennsylvania? Me either. And I can picture a hell of a lot, but this is where we are now. Or at least it's where the Democrats are. On the Democrat side, we've arrived in a place where politics has become completely divorced from achievement. You don't need to be good at anything. You don't need a stable employment history, or any employment history, really. You don't need to be an exceptional speaker, or an exceptional writer, or an exceptional anything. You don't need any original ideas. In fact, it's better if you don't have those. All you need for a bright future in politics is the ability to vomit out the correct platitudes on command and the willingness to do exactly as you are told. And this is all rather a radical departure from the first 20-odd decades of our political history. Somebody who tried to run for Congress without ever having a job before would have been laughed out of the room for most of our history. Elected officials who were terrible at their current jobs could safely expect not to receive promotions to higher office. In other words, there was a relationship between political achievement and non-political achievement. In order to have a chance at the former, you had to possess the latter. If you're asking us, the voters of this district or this state, as the case may be, to elevate you to this high office and make you our representative in the nation's capital, then you need to show us that you're the kind of man who warrants the trust that you are beseeching us to invest in you. So tell us about who you are, where you've been, what you've done. Tell us about your life experience that you possess that recommends you to the office you seek. But we don't get any of that anymore, do we? All we get is, here you go. These are your party's nominees this year. Now go vote for them early and often, because the other guys are dangerous extremists. Do I think there's an easy answer for why things have gotten to be this way? Yeah, I do. I think there's 2 main factors that are about equally responsible for it. First, we have the same 2 institutionalized factions that we had at the end of the Civil War. The longer that status quo is allowed to persist, the more corrosive it becomes, and the worse the results are. The second factor, obviously, is the madness of identity politics. When you start prioritizing immutable attributes over individual characteristics, and you keep doing it for 2 or 3 decades or more, it will inevitably lead you to a pretty ridiculous place where you probably don't want to be. And let's not pretend that identity politics only exists on the left, because it just as well exists in the GOP. In Nikki Haley's launch video, it took her exactly 4 seconds to play the race card. In Tim Scott's launch video, it took him 7 seconds. Both of those candidates launched their campaigns by appealing directly to identity politics. And no, Tim Scott, you don't get a free pass by trying to blame it on the leftists. You opened your launch video with, Why are the leftists so obsessed with race? Hi, I'm the black Republican. I grew up in the projects with my single mom. Dude, just stop. You don't need me to tell you you're black. Nikki Haley doesn't need me to tell her to tell me that she's half Indian. I don't care. Tell me what you're good at. Tell me what your ideas are. Give me a damn reason why I should vote for you. But don't complain about the other side playing the race card when you are actively engaged in playing that same goddamn race card. If you want me to believe you reject leftist identity politics, then stop embracing leftist identity politics, is all I'm saying. You can't have it both ways. You can't play the identity politics game when you think it's advantageous and convenient and pretend to be above the fray when it's not. It just makes you look like a sleazy, lying, opportunist politician. Meanwhile, back in the present day, I have no idea how the Democrats are going to handle this. I don't think they believe they can thread the needle a second time with Joe Biden, not with a 4-year track record of awfulness under his belt, and not in an election year where he will be unable to hide in the basement the entire time like he did in 2020. That's why I say Joe Biden was a serviceable one-time candidate for the 2020 election and only the 2020 election. So now there's some pressing decisions that need to be made because the old guy went and announced his candidacy. Do you force him out of office just to get him out of the race? Because if you do that, well, then all of a sudden you've got accidental President Kamala Harris on your hands, and she might not take too kindly to being told she's not going to be the nominee next year. You see, complications like these are why I predicted the scenario that I predicted last year. I thought they were going to move Kamala aside by bumping her up to the Supreme Court, and the opportunity presented itself to do that. Then you install Hillary in the vice presidency. Then you have her bring Joe down in some sort of palace coup. I can't imagine they didn't at least consider doing something like that, but who knows? Maybe they don't think Hillary has any better chance of beating Trump in 24 than Biden does. As it is now, I've got no idea what they're going to do. But Joe's got a campaign slogan at least, and that is the important thing. The slogan? Let's finish the job. Frankly, I shudder to think what job he might be talking about, whether it's the job of blundering us into World War III, the job of ripping the beating heart out of the national economy, the job of erasing the southern border altogether, or the job of making sure your kids have plenty of gay porn to read in school. Now, frankly, I thought he came up with a perfectly good slogan during the Ireland trip when he finished a speech to a foreign legislature under the aegis of an official state visit with the immortal words, "Let's go lick the world." Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would never presume to tell you I know what goes on in the withered husk that used to be Joe Biden's cerebellum, but of all the ad-lib lines you could think to say at the end of a diplomatic speech, of all the options that are available for things you could say in that moment, I just don't know how you arrive at that. Does the world even want to be licked? Isn't that the sort of thing where you have to secure the prior consent of the other party? If I'm not mistaken, this was just about the most awkward thing Joe Biden has said into a live microphone since that time he said we need to solve domestic violence by punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. And besides, I always thought Let's Go Lick the World was the name of the 1981 Rolling Stones World Tour. Thanks very much for watching. Have a pleasant tomorrow. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.